Musical Talk, the UK's independent musical theatre podcast. Hello and welcome to another edition of Musical Talk. I'm Thos Ribbits. Do you know, I've been saying that more or less weekly for 8 years and nobody's ever replied. I'm starting to think this isn't a dating website. Now, talking of love, he said tortuously, many people in the world think it's a pain. And you may not realise it, that's a tremendously witty joke. I'm punning in a different language because anyone who knows French will know that the word for loaf or bread in France is pain, P-A-I-N. And so you can draw a connection between the word love and the word bread. And you do it through France, which is a convenient way for me to start talking about the Stephen Schwartz musical, The Baker's Wife. It's one of those musicals which has been around for a long time. In fact, a surprisingly long time. As an idea for a musical, it was first mooted in the 1950s. The story itself is based on a French film from 1938 called La Femme du Boulanger, which is the wife of the baker, the baker's wife. And in the 1950s it was picked up as a property that might be turned into a musical and had such names attached to it as A. Burroughs and Frank Lesser. But nothing really sort of happened, although it continued to sort of bubble along in the background as an idea for a musical and was still being proposed for one in the 1960s when Zero Mostel was identified as somebody who might be in it. But it really took to life as a musical in 1976 when David Merrick was able to get the rights, and he asked Joseph Stein and Stephen Schwartz to turn their hands to turning it into a musical. And they did. And in 1976 it toured America for 6 months. But nothing really came of it, which is a great pity. And so it lay dormant until Trevor Nunn became intrigued in the piece. So he arranged to bring the show to London, where it opened in the West End in 1989. I remember it well. But it only lasted for 56 performances. It's one of those unusual shows where everyone who went to see it said it was marvellous. It was getting standing ovations, which at the time was a very unusual thing in London. It's become a lot more common now, but I can assure you in the 1980s, very few people stood up at the end of a show unless they were planning to leave. But despite all the critical responses, which were excellent, both from the punters who went to see it and from the reviewers, the show only lasted 56 because they just weren't selling enough tickets. That traditional problem of British theatre. But that didn't stop it being nominated for a Laurence Olivier Theatre Award. But regrettably, it then remained dormant for very nearly another decade until 1997, when Joseph Stein and Stephen Schwartz got back together again to help retool and rebuild it slightly for a production then, and then for another in 2002. So really it's continued to be developed over a course of nearly 30 years. In fact, it was only when the production of 2005 opened that the show solidified into the version of the show that we see today. It was then it was called a miniature masterpiece, and everyone who's ever seen it has always said positive things about it. Which is lucky really, because it's finally coming again to London. It did have a short run at the Union Theatre in Southwark in 2011, which was well lauded, but between the 16th of June and the 4th of July you can see it at the Drayton Arms Theatre in the Old Brompton Road. Well, I've been intrigued by The Baker's Wife for a long time. It suffers in two real ways, not as a piece, but because of the family tree of which it is a part. Stephen Schwartz, of course, has written the blockbuster musical Wicked, and whilst it's wonderful to have something like that in your portfolio, it does tend to overshadow all the other shows that you might have written. And so that is the case for The Baker's Wife. It's remembered only by being another show by Stephen Schwartz. The other problem it suffers from is the fact that Stephen Schwartz is a tremendously versatile writer, and of course once you've had a show like Wicked, which is almost iconic, everyone expects all your other shows to be like it, and it isn't. He's too versatile for that, he's too talented, and therefore The Baker's Wife is not another Wicked. It is another Stephen Schwartz show, but it's not another Wicked. So what is it? Well, it's charming, funny, endearing, and a lot more sophisticated than it might first appear. It's set in 1930s rural France, and it's a charming story of a bickering village which has been struggling without bread since the death of its baker. That may not sound much, but obviously there's more to it than meets the eye. It seems to have entranced everyone who's ever seen it, and I'm looking forward to being entranced myself. And perhaps you will be too, if you come along and see it at the Drayton Arms Theatre. I caught up with 4 of the principal cast. They actually play a group of characters who liaise together throughout the show itself, which is the local mayor and his 3 female nieces, which is a nice way of suggesting a relationship which might have more to it than meets the eye. In fact, as this conversation develops, you'll see that the entire show has rather more to it than meets the eye. The baker's wife is almost symbolically the kind of thing that you would actually see in a baker's window. It is a beautiful light confection, a soufflé almost. So let's find out more in this following interview. Musical talk.
I'm Amy Lawton and I'm playing the character of Simone in The Baker's Wife.
Hi, I'm Lauren Harvey and I'm playing Nicole.
Hi, I'm Danielle Bond and I play Inez.
Hi, I'm Blair Robertson and I'm playing the Marquis.
Now, The Baker's Wife. Now, Baker's Wife has sort of gone into the books because everyone's heard of it because it's a show by Stephen Schwartz. That's quite difficult to say. It's got far too many sibilants in it. But it's also a very different show by Stephen Schwartz. So I'm going to ask you each, when you were invited to join the cast, what did you know about the show, if anything? Or were you expecting more Wicked? I mean, we've got to get Wicked into the conversation somehow. It's sort of hanging around like the elephant in the room. Did any of you know the piece beforehand?
I knew Gifts of Love because I sung it quite a long time ago when I was at the Brit School, just as part of like a concert thing. So I knew that song, but I think the music is it varies a lot. So it doesn't all sound like Gifts of Love. So it's apart from, that's the only thing I knew, which doesn't give much away, I don't think.
So you knew a song, but you didn't really know the piece from which it came?
No, I didn't.
I mean, I thought exactly the same. That the only songs I knew were Proud Lady and Meadowlark, and these big numbers for a guy and a girl, and I assumed it would just be another Wicked, another big, all these big numbers.
Pop belters.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it isn't at all,
it's not. There's so much very different themes of musicality in it. It's just, and the story as well is completely different. It's quite it's quite humble.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth in this story. Not saying there's, of course, there's a little bit of truth in Wicked, maybe, I don't know. But there's no green witches. It's set in a rural village, so it's quite mellow in comparison. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about that. Without giving anything away, could somebody have a crack at just briefly describing what The Baker's Wife is about? And please don't say it's about the wife of a baker. I think that has been established.
Is my answer gone? It was... Well, I think the Baker's Wife, it's set in a rural village in France. Villagers are awaiting the arrival of their new baker. They've been out without bread for 7 weeks, and tensions are high because they need their bread.
And when's it set?
1930.
Yes, because it has that feel of, it's had that pattern of age when you're waiting for your community representative, a vicar or a butcher or a candlestick maker,
it's very important to a village.
It is, it's a community character, isn't it?
Yeah.
Someone unique.
Yeah.
Everyone has a role.
Ha-ha.
Hey.
It's quite a gossipy place, really. It's quite a sort of tight little village where everybody knows each other's business.
This is life. There's no life outside of it.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's an enclosed environment.
And at the beginning of the show, we see them all sort of the little niggling things. They're all getting to each other where they are so hungry for bread and so close knit.
Well, I suppose it's the family concept writ large, is it not? It's the idea that a family is full of people who get along, but don't necessarily always get along as well as they might.
Absolutely.
There are tensions and, as you say, niggles under the surface. There are seething resentments and jealousies, as well as love and companionship and friendship. I'm guessing that's all in the Baker's Wife.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Would it drive the plot in any way?
Who knows? You'll have to come next Tuesday.
New things happening in the little world is kind of what drives the story. I
It's
think.
change in a set environment, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think that's a narrative trope in an awful lot of shows, whether they be drama or musical. But the way you're describing it, and of course, is when, as we said at the beginning, when people think of Stephen Schwartz, they think of bombastic pop anthems and the very, very, and I use the word popular, but the popular piece that is Wicked, which is, obviously it's a massive success. It's not subtle. You're describing a historic environment for The Baker's Wife, and there's a baker in it and a baker's wife, obviously. And of course, the first thing that I think of is Into the Woods by Stephen Sondheim. And the way you're describing the context, it's not quite the same. There's no mythical creatures, but there is a sense of community with these sort of figures in it.
Yeah.
Does you, as people in musical theatre, do you hear those resonances? Are they something you'd say, actually, yes, this is more, ironically, that narrative world than the Wicked narrative world, or do you not? Absolutely. Or are you too busy concentrating on the world that you're actually presented with, and context in musical theatre terms rather than narrative terms is not something you're worried about?
No, absolutely. I think when we all started the read-through and first heard the music for the first time, we were all talking about that sounds like from this musical and this sounds from this, but it's also an amalgamation of so many different storylines that we'd already seen that weren't Stephen Schwartz. It was just saying, as you said, with Sondheim, there's a lot of elements in that as well.
But they're echoes, aren't they? I mean, I suppose no one would ever accuse Stephen Schwartz of copying Sondheim because he doesn't need to. I think the problem with Stephen Schwartz, his problem is he's so versatile. You know, these two shows together show a versatility. The problem is when you're versatile, people don't always can recognise.
They can't categorise.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And so we're doing what people do. Oh, it's a bit Sondheim-y. Oh, it's a bit Schwartzy. It's a bit Jerry Hermione.
I think it feels fairy tale-esque, quite like some of the music in some of the Disney films.
Right. So what gives it that environment? Is it the closed community? Is it? Why do you say that? Or is it the musical tones you're saying?
The stock characters, kind of the sort of amable, the amiable big baker kind of thing, the pretty wife, the handsome young man, the kind of stock characters that we recognise from fairy tales. They're in it. The man telling off his wife all the time and stuff like that.
So would you agree? Would you say that it has that sort of fairy tale feel for you as well? I mean, do you all get that sense of something? I want to use the word magical, but without magic. There's something.
Yeah, because really it's a very ordinary life, isn't it? It's a very ordinary day-to-day that they go through, but there is that air of something could happen at any minute that can completely turn our worlds around. And
like the lack of bread.
Yeah. And there's comedy in it too. It's funny, but
it's a musical comedy.
It's described as such, isn't it? Yes, on your website. It is a musical comedy.
Yeah. There's a lot of very funny little moments, definitely.
And when it comes to bread in musicals, we obviously all think Les Miserables, so it's good to know you can have a comedy version.
Oh yeah.
But it's interesting what we were saying just then about it's all very mundane and conventional in terms of lifestyle. As tropes that relate to the way that we all used to live historically, but none of us in this room do now. We're all in a city.
The French still do in a way. They still get their bread. Even in Paris, you can go and get your bread fresh.
From the bakers.
Yeah. And I love playing the community because you don't really have that nowadays, do you? You don't have that. You don't know really sometimes your neighbours that well. So
sometimes you don't want to.
Well, yeah.
But can I ask you then? Forgive me, because. Let's talk about the characters in the piece, and your 4 characters are inextricably linked. Would you care to explain to me how? I mean, you mentioned your characters, their names again, but why are they linked?
Okay, well I'll take that.
For our listeners, everyone looked at you, Blair.
Yeah. My character, the Marquis, has 3 nieces. Should we say, not necessarily his nieces, but they are somebody's nieces, played by Simone, Nicole, and Inez. And one of them will say something.
Well, the Marquis looks after us. He has money and assets to look after us.
You did a marvellous mime. It looked like you were miming the size of the fish you just caught. So.
Exactly thus.
We did a lot of methods, you see.
Drama school.
Oh dear.
And we're all a little bit naughty, and it's very fun. We have a very good relationship between the 3 of us as well. So there's kind of.
So you are friends. You're not rivals in.
Oh,
let's be
no.
honest. In the affections of the Marquis, or.
There's sometimes a little bit of tension, but that's just we kind of play that out, and it's kind of one day it's one person's turn to be the favourite, and then we kind of take it in turns that way, and we do work it out.
So it's really a menage a quatre. In some senses, isn't it?
Actually.
I mean, and if I may say, I'm talking here very much from a stereotype point of view, but it is part of the traditional view of the libidinous Frenchman.
Absolutely, yes,
Who
absolutely.
can both not be trusted and can be extremely trusted with women, using both senses of that. Did you know each other as actors before? Because actually, that's quite a sophisticated setup in terms of characters, isn't it? It's because you're not at each other's throats. You're all sort of friends, but there's this friendly rivalry, and forgive me, there's the element of sex, and it's 3 women, 1 man, so there's that kind of balance. I'm not going to ask.
It's a great balance. It's doing so well. It's done well.
But did you know each other at all beforehand, or have you've had to forge that relationship as you forge your own working relationship yourself?
Absolutely.
It happened really naturally though, which is quite nice because there was no. We kind of just felt it as we went along, and as we were doing the rehearsals, little things kind of kept appearing. We were like, oh, well, this could mean this, so we can move that on into the next scene. So it was very naturally done, and we have formed quite a nice little friendship, which has been lovely. So
we've been really careful to give each other our separate personalities, so that we're not just the 3. It's not.
You don't come en masse, as it were. You are there's one and another and a third.
See very individual characters on stage, which is nice.
But that must be so important for you as actresses, if you don't mind me saying, mustn't it? Because if you were a homogenous, 3-headed sort of love interest, it wouldn't be very interesting. We have 3 characters who've got an interrelationship with each other as well as with the Marquis.
Yeah.
That must be more interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
I was intrigued by what you were saying, that you, as you go through it, you were picking things up, presumably from the narrative, the text, and from that building. The characters that you've got today. How easy is that for you? And without giving anything away, can you sort of suggest one small little thing that you came across in the text? You thought, I can do something with that. My character clearly has a wooden leg, or whatever it is that makes her alluring.
Well, we've kind of named. You're the Chihuahua, aren't you?
Yeah.
The feisty.
The feisty little Chihuahua that's going to bite you.
Yeah. So that's kind of come forward a few times.
I don't know why.
But no, it's a lot of the scenes. Something will be happening with other characters, and we sort of react to what's happening on the stage.
Have a little moment.
Yeah,
each other. Yeah.
Try and find the game. There's always a game going on, So you've just got to play with each other a bit and sort of see what fits. And the great thing about theatre is you can change that every night a bit. Once you've got into that safe place and you all know how to catch the ball with each other, you can have a bit more fun.
But I'd like to flip it over to you then, if I may, Mr. Marquis.
Please do.
Because, how does the relationship seem to you? Because there is also the possibility, isn't there, that you can play it, or it can be written in such a way that you are the person who doles out your affection and it's a different favourite every day. Or it could be that in some senses the women in the corporate whole are rotating and picking who's going to be your person today. I don't know how it's written, so you must tell me. Are you always the master of the situation, or are you sometimes in a situation where you have been mastered?
Well,
I don't want to get too 50 Shades of Grey.
No. I think in some ways the way I try to look at it is that I think the character thinks he's in control. However, I do think there is a sort of a siren aspect of it.
Oh, what a beautiful phrase.
Yes, but of coming across that it's these 3 beautiful women that are just coming across, and they can basically get what they want. All they have to do is flirt with the Marquis, and the Marquis will do it. He'll sort it out. He's the mayor of the town, and he will make sure there's extra bread, there's anything they want. And it's such.
So this relationship is very clearly a 2-way relationship in the sense of between the gender, at least. You're getting as much out of the Marquis as the Marquis is clearly getting out of you. But I'm just fascinated by this because this is quite an interesting. I like the idea there are 4 people in this relationship. I don't want to sound too much like the late Princess of Wales, but you get the idea. But it is complicated, isn't it?
Yeah.
And yet and therefore quite sophisticated.
It's quite postmodern, isn't it?
It is,
really?
yes.
Yeah.
That's the shock though in the village though.
Yeah.
That's the kind of underlying bit of bubble. Everyone knows it's happening, but there's not really anybody that wants to comment on it because it is so unheard of, really.
But presumably the veneer of respectability is also maintained, is it? I mean, it's not overtly done, it's understood, but you all have to pretend that it isn't happening.
Yes, absolutely. We hide the sin.
But once again, that's another layer of... once again, it's layer upon layer upon layer. You've got the sophisticated relationship between the 4 of you as characters, plus the 2-way relationship between the gender and who's in the power struggle, if you look at it from that point of view, and then the... how do you veneer it for public consumption?
Yeah, the social mask.
Absolutely. And that's all in the text. And I mean, this is why you're professional actors and you can bring all this out. But I suppose the question I'd ask you then is do you think if you came back to this in a year's time, cast in the same roles, would you do it the same way, or would you find a different way of doing it from the text?
I'm
I'm always interested in text, you see. So.
I think about plays that I did 5-6 years ago, and I always think of new things all the time. And I think as your experiences in life change and grow, you always find new things in text, and you're going to find new things in characters. So I would have to say yes, definitely.
It also depends how the other characters react towards you.
Yeah.
Of course,
because at the moment, the way the atmosphere that we kind of have set with our cast has built up this situation essentially to what it is. But with a different cast, that could be that could go down a little different path as well. So it also depends like how people are talking about you in the scenes as to how you portray yourself as well.
So have any? Well, sorry, you were about to say that.
I was just going to further on from the point. Absolutely, that it depends. As the years go by and you gain knowledge, you have more experiences, you know a lot more, or you know a lot less, depending on how your lifestyle has been. You approach it differently, and you have to approach it differently. It can't be just the same regurgitation of everything you've done before, because it would just stagnate, and then yourself would just get bored.
Yeah.
The more that, even doing it now, the more we run this show, the more I feel sorry for the Marquis.
Really?
Because you said that brilliant line at the end, about you suddenly start to get an insight into, is this really what he wants, kind of thing. And
Yeah, it plays at Love. It's a. I can't remember the name of the line. It was. Perhaps that is why some people who are unable to love one play at love with many.
So it's a dawning realisation of one's own weaknesses or foibles, I suppose.
Absolutely, yeah.
But then again, and that's also known, I have to say, particularly for men, midlife crisis.
It is a bit.
You were talking earlier, by the way, that very lovely thing where you're now in a very comfortable space with each other, and therefore you can sort of play around with the characters. Do any of you ever think, I'm going to actually throw everyone a complete curveball today?
Absolutely.
All right, straight in there. Right, so how?
Do you know what? I've never actually thought of anything before, but just of a different reaction, how a different movement, how the way you look at somebody, just to see how the different reaction, just to get a real response.
Yeah.
So instead of just, I know I've got to turn and look at you at this point, at this line, it's so much better, and I'm sure Amy's very good at that as well.
We like to play around with that a little bit.
She's an organic actress.
A bit cheeky. I like to, see how far you can kind of push things a little bit.
But you're all happy with that, because there are different actors with different styles. There are some people who do not like to deviate from the text at all. I'm not saying you deviate from the text, but certainly in terms of dialogue. But some people are very strict on, this is the way we rehearsed it, we do it this way. And there are some people who say, right, now we've got that, let's experiment. I'm getting the impression for your experimenters, but and you all seem quite comfortable with it. But is that true? Have you yet discovered each other's limits?
Sometimes,
well, you're all prepared to talk to each other, which is nice.
sometimes you can play around, but maybe, I'm not talking about this show, but
Yes, of course.
the people you're playing opposite don't necessarily with what they're doing. So I still think as long as everyone feels sure of what they're doing, that's when you can start experimenting.
When you're sure of your character, I think it's when you're able to play around, to find the nice texture, find the details that you're allowed to play with other characters with.
It's a variation of reality, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Because, we all have a character in our life, and we all treat every day as different, even when you live a tremendously conventional life. I speak from truth. Let's talk a little bit about the score then. Now, you're presented to me as a ready-made quartet. Does that manifest itself in the score, or is the infinite variety of combinations that the four of you offer, even within the characters, is that the way that the songs come out for you, or is it at both? Or have I missed an option?
Yes.
You may discuss, confer, phone a friend, I don't mind.
There is a point. We do come in a quartet later on in the second act. We kind of show that off, but throughout the piece, we are singing own lines with everybody else, and everyone's is quite individual, rather than just us four always together.
Yes.
Three of us
We
would be
sing all the
soprano,
time, most
so
of the
we're
time together.
Yeah. And then the other female characters would always take the lower harmony. So I suppose that kind of
really?
it's just interesting how it's kind of worked out, really.
And that's throughout the score, is it? Is that significant?
Yeah.
Do you think in some way? Is that meaningful? Because forgive me, you're with the mayor of the town. Does it in some way represent your social status?
Lots of the nieces' lines in the score are written to be sung together.
They really are.
And we're classified as the nieces.
nieces.
Oh right,
Yeah, we
you
don't.
come as a job lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Essentially.
I just wondered if, because I'm also interested in how your four plug into the wider story, plug into the wider range of characters, and what is your relationship with the baker and his wife? I mean, as the mayor of the town, yours must be quite significant.
Yes, I suppose it is. No, it is. It is in the way. But I think it's. Although I think at the very beginning it appears like quite a superficial town. That there's nothing that's very surface driven, and that all we really care about is bread. And during our points, our interactions with the baker are telling me how brilliant his bread is, and how there's different pastries, and how much we love his baking. Thank God he saved our town. As far as personal matters go, when his personal matters disrupt us getting bread, that's when we dislike him and not get on very well with him. For regards with the mayor, though, I'm not exactly sure. It's not written to be very deep interactions with so many characters. That, unfortunately.
Well, in fairness, most of his time I'd have thought would be taken up with the ones he is having relationships with.
That is true. Yes.
Are you, as the nieces, do you have a different relationship? Your status in the local environment is not actually connected to the mayor per se, is it? Well, I suppose it is in a way, but
we're a little bit bitchy towards the baker's wife, really, because she comes in, she's young, she's pretty, and we've got to keep our man. I think,
yeah,
a bit.
it's kind of
So
at first,
but we're really happy to have bread.
it's a real thing.
We're so hungry.
When
you haven't had your meal yet and you're starving, and all you can think about is that meal. Yes. We're like that with bread because it's been weeks.
When he first enters, he's almost godlike, isn't he? The way we all crowd round and just want to make him comfortable, make him happy. But I know from Inez's point of view, because Inez is possibly maybe the good girl of the three. She wants to get married, so see Jean-Pierre married, what's so special about her, kind of thing as well. So there's a jealousy, I think, that goes on.
I've got to ask this because if someone were coming to this fresh, and someone described it to them as it's a 1930s French village waiting for its baker, and he turns up with a beautiful wife, they might say, well, I'm going to think that's potentially sexist from the period. Not sexist, but the gender models from the 1930s fall into a particular way.
Yeah.
And power is mostly vested in men in society and much less in women. You could add that the sexual aspects of it give women levers on power, which is still true. Ho-ho. But this is a piece which is named after a female character, and that in itself is quite unusual. And obviously it's not written contemporarily in the sense that it was written many years after the 1930s. Yeah. Is it saying anything significant about interaction and gender politics? The reason I ask is because it is unusual for a show to be named after a female character. It shouldn't be, but it is. Well, and it's to be applauded. But I wondered if it's significant or it's an accident. Do you sort of see what I'm driving at?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think it. But in a way, I think if I go back to Stephen Schwartz, I always thought when he writes songs for women, he writes such amazing songs for women, such really big power ballads for women, which is absolutely fantastic. And I think when we go back to being the superficial element, when you first see it and it seems like men are in control, that's not the case, really. When it comes back that the women of the town have a lot more, and the second act, it shows that they have a lot more power than was first seen. That men may seem a bit jolly and having a good time, but the women actually are a lot smarter than was being portrayed before. And I think it's good. I think that shows in Schwartz, and not just, it's Joseph Stein that wrote the book. But,
and you're right to mention it.
Yeah, let's get that out there. But both their writing to show that maybe it looks like the men are in control, but the women are also here. The women also, they've got a big part to play as well.
It's leverage, isn't it, in some senses? How would you describe? We touched upon this earlier. Then the score in its widest sense. You were saying that he's very good at the power ballads, particularly for female characters, and you all nodded agreement. You were saying, it's a good score for the female characters. And I mean, are you all happy with the songs that you're?
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. Some tricky harmonies, but
well, that's
great songs.
Well, is that partly because you come as a three? I mean, you were saying that earlier, isn't it? But in terms of your singing,
Well,
You
yeah.
must have harmonies,
Actually,
I'm
we
guessing.
do have quite a couple of quite tough ones actually.
Yeah,
to
but
nail.
then there's sort of songs where we're with others as well, and then feminine companionship, where I don't know, is it 6-part harmony, or is it
Yeah.
6-part.
more than that?
Maybe.
Maybe.
We've added a couple of key changes in as well, so that doesn't
Yes, yeah.
doesn't make anything easier.
Yeah, so it doesn't just need a piece of music; it needs a road map.
Exactly, yeah.
It's not an easy read. Like, do you know what I mean? It's not
Yeah.
you simply sit down and whack it out. It's
Yeah.
there's a lot to the music. You can tell he's taken a lot of time over this. So
And
it's,
I think, like, if you listen to all the songs, you wouldn't say, oh, they're all in the same musical,
No.
necessarily.
No.
No, not at all.
So it's quite a wide palette of options.
yeah,
Okay.
but they do
Definitely.
have some of the songs do have little flavors from
Yes.
other songs that do
Yeah.
link them,
So
but
it's
they all
integrated in
have
that
their
sense.
unique little character to each song. It's like every song has something different.
Some are sort of very major and happy, and others are kind of atonal in parts. So, yeah.
Modern, I believe, is the word you're looking for.
Yes, avant-garde.
Oh, two French words, I'm loving it. Living the part. Right, your favourite song? I'm going to go around each one by one. Your favourite song, it doesn't have to be a song you sing yourself.
Okay. Oh, me first. I like Romance. It's the ladies only song, which is quite nice in the second half. So it's probably my favourite harmony-wise, and lyrically I think it's quite beautiful. And it's the one it's the shift for me. It's the gear change to show.
It was a romance.
Yeah, but it building on what Blair said, really shows the strength in the women in the community and how they feel, because a lot of the time it is how the men are feeling about bread, and we don't really get a say. Like, we're there nodding in agreement, but it's the men. The men are talking about how they want their bread. We want their bread, and we're all nodding, yeah. But the things that we want kind of come out in the second act, and I think that's a really nice gear change for us to take as the women of the cast, which is lovely. And it's very united, which is nice too. So that's my choice.
It's really hard because every day when I hear the songs, I have a different favourite.
You had a moment today, didn't you?
I love a lot of the songs. I love Luckiest Man in the World, which is a boys' number, but then we go into Feminine Companionship, which is probably my favourite song to sing. But I think If I Have to Live Alone is a gorgeous song, which Amabla sings. Ask me tomorrow, it'll be something.
Yeah, I think definitely my favourite to perform is Feminine Companionship.
Oh, it is.
But that's because we've just had so much fun doing it, and it's just a laugh, isn't it? It's so, and that the harmonies there are so close and so clever.
And we get wee dance break in it as well, don't we?
There's dance
Yeah.
too.
Bit of dancing.
Oh,
and
yeah.
everything.
Oh, yeah.
But that's when you really see them as a team,
Yeah.
sort of all uniting to try and cheer up Amabla and try and
Yeah.
get our bread back, and that's the four of us. I feel like being a real team in that one. Yeah.
To narrow it down, but I think Romance it's they sing it so beautifully and perform it so well. It's one of my favourites. I have to say, as well as that though, I quite like Serenade, where it's such a beautiful, and again,
Agreement from the floor.
it's such a, again, it's so different from anything else that's been on before, or you hear the rest of it. It's quite, I feel it's quite a sexual music, as with the Serenade would be, but the type of the music, how it's written, I feel it is quite sexually charged, and you can feel it when you hear it.
Well, let me ask the question, which is
Oh,
possibly
dear.
all too, well, no, it's possibly all too obvious, and you might say, well, fool, how have you not noticed this already? But you've been talking with great passion and fervour about the character's passion and fervour for bread, and of course, when you just say that all sounds unusual. It's unusual to be so passionate about bread, or possibly. Is it in any way symbolic of something else? Is bread being used here as a different term?
I think you might have got onto something.
Finally, the dawn. I mean, and I'm not going to say what I suspect it is, because I think that's for our theatre-going public to discover for themselves. But you've mentioned just amongst the songs, you said there's romance, and then there's the sexual aspects of it in the song Serenade.
Yes.
So you've got romance and sex, and they aren't always the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, they are
in
flips.
between is like desire. I think it's about.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of it's about desire. You know.
There's
I
also
don't wanna really-
platonic relationships as well, though, isn't it? I mean, love love comes in lots of different sizes and shapes and
Yeah.
strengths and worths.
You
actually,
see that though in some of the other characters that aren't here with us today. You see, and when you see us all on stage in a community environment, you see the different relationships.
Well,
The
you
ones,
can.
yeah,
Yeah.
the ones that are maybe more sexual than
Yeah.
others, the ones that are coming from a true love, romantic feeling, and you do see that playing out, and the ones that perhaps aren't working so well.
Yes.
So we have like a nice broad spectrum that you really can see the difference in
And there's
that.
also speech marks fake love, which is fear of loneliness, isn't it? It's companionship will do kind of thing. Which, yeah. Maybe we're moving into the real world, I don't know, but
Get away!
well, real world is only there to depress us, to make us go to musical theatre, as far as I'm concerned. I've got a question. Once again, forgive me for you nieces, if you don't mind me speaking to you conglomerately. Sorry about this, Mayor.
That's all right.
But the question is, show is on next week. After that, you stop. Someone says, let's do it again. Would you want to be anyone else's character of the three of you? Who would you swap with, I suppose, is what I'm driving towards in this question.
That's a really good
Who would you like to be who isn't the one you are?
I think it'd be great to learn all of the parts and just swap every night.
Oh!
Do the Frankenstein thing. Yeah. You know?
Do you want to mention it to Mark?
Maybe for week 3 we could do that, but I don't know for next week.
So you like them all, clearly. You find them all, they've all got something to offer you.
Yeah,
Yes.
of course. Yeah.
This would never happen, but I would love to play the baker. Because he's so happy and he puts on such a front, but he must know, that. Well, we see it when in one of the scenes he comes in and says, I know it was a gamble going with someone so much younger than me and so beautiful. I think it's a really sad character to play, really. I think he's very vulnerable. I wouldn't be allowed.
I think you'd be a great baker.
Yeah, why not?
I say why not, yes.
Role reversal, yeah.
Well, we'll talk about that in a second.
I don't know. Like with you in the songs and it changing every day for you, I think my favourite character changes every day. I do like the male characters more so in this show. I think it is, especially in the first act, it is very male orientated, like very male driven. But they have some cracking characters coming out, but maybe that's the way they're playing them. So I'd rather be the way they're playing them, maybe not necessarily the way someone else would play them. I don't know. I like Barnaby. I think Barnaby's cool. He's another member of our society. Yeah, you have to come see it to see what he does.
I'm certainly going to be coming to
But
see it.
he, I think he'd probably be my choice. He's a bit of an ass. But we're quite girly characters, and it would be nice to kind of flip it up a bit and do something a bit different.
Coming at the butch end.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, as we have started gender bending, I feel
I'd like to be the baker's wife.
I
I want to sing all the big songs.
Is that true? You would?
I would love to sing. Yeah, absolutely. I think, though, if I had to pick a character, I think the baker would be. I'd love to play the baker's wife, to sing those songs. And our story is fantastic, her journey that she goes through. But as far as, further on, you were saying about the baker, he has got such a journey. And for him, as we were talking again, this superficial front, he goes all the way through playing this. And it shows you show him breaking down as we go through it, and then him revealing his true self near the end. It's quite heartbreaking. It's quite moving, and it's quite a really nice role to play.
And use a dreadful word, it's a good journey.
Yes.
Yeah, so as an actor that must appeal, presumably.
There's a nice arc. There you go.
Look at the arc on that.
Yeah.
And Dominique as well. Dominique has a lovely, brilliant song, Proud Lady, which
Yeah, it's
is...
great.
He just gets to be the one that everyone desires, though. He's like the beautiful one.
Well, there has been a trend recently for all-male Gilbert and Sullivans, as I'm sure.
Yeah,
Sacha
Pirates.
Reagan has done.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was fantastic.
Brilliant number of those, and indeed I once saw an all-male version of Sweet Charity.
Oh wow.
Which, well, I mean, they made the charity character gay to make that work.
Okay.
So it wasn't like Pirates and the Gilbert and Sullivans, where actually it's just men playing all the characters, but they're still supposed to be male or female as they are in the original. But I'm so interested in what you were saying, that wouldn't it be fantastic if you could actually play any part without the gender being important? This is so much, the way you've described it to me, about the way society works, and therefore the structures of society would be less clear, I imagine, if people were playing different genders to the one they usually do. But I suppose what I'm trying to say is, can you envisage any way where this, or indeed any... what you've done, you've really excited me as an idea. How could this work in a all-male or all-female, or a all women playing men and all men playing the female parts? Not necessarily dressed as women, men dressed as women and women dressed as men. I mean, the baker becoming... There's no reason why a baker shouldn't be a woman, and the partner is the baker's husband. But how would you like to see it work? Let me just boil that down to that. Stop talking.
Wow.
I don't think gender swap is... I mean, I think it's a very old idea. Shakespeare.
Oh,
yeah, absolutely.
Well, it was required.
Absolutely. To go into it. But
I remember him telling me.
I'd actually quite like to see an all-female cast this year, because there is a lot of all-male shows which is an all-male playing the parts, and there's the sort of thing, that's going to be brilliant, we want to see this. But I'd quite like to see the opportunity, because there's so many amazing females that never get the chance to really perform because the parts aren't written for them. And it'd be great to put them into that show where they're able to just showcase all that.
I agree with that, absolutely. It shouldn't just be Mark Rylance and Stephen Fry doing Shakespeare, should it? I mean, much as that's wonderful, why not have Dame Helen Mirren and Judi Dench?
Well, they did it at the
you
Donmar.
three. Sorry?
At the Donmar, they did
did they?
Julius Caesar, didn't they? All female.
I'm afraid I didn't actually pick that up, did they? When did they
Yeah,
do
and
that?
I've seen King Lear play
I heard
by a
that.
girl, and I played a boy in the last play I did. So
I take it
think
all
it's
back.
happening.
Yes.
I think it is happening, but maybe not as
They
much.
obviously just don't tell men, because I didn't know
I
either.
don't think it's as common.
It's not as common at all.
It's not as common, but it.
So would this work in that way? Or would you have to do it the Sacha Reagan version, where you're all one gender but just carrying on playing the characters as written, male or female?
You can make anything work. I think
You
if you
can,
have a
yes.
clear vision.
Yeah. No, that's a really good answer, and I just wish a few people did. If we'd done... What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think you have a vision.
Well, one day when I have enough money, I'll buy a theatre and I'll hire
Put
you
it
all.
out, do.
But forgive me, you know as well as I do that London West End Theatre is so small C conservative at the moment, and all we're getting is
Yeah.
revivals of everything and everything and everything.
With the same
why,
people
yeah,
as
why,
well,
yeah,
it's
why
very-
not revive them, but then twist them?
Yeah.
If we've got to have Miss Saigon or Mr. Saigon, why not actually play with it a bit? Everyone
Yeah.
saw Miss Saigon the first time
I
round.
think that unfortunately the fear is getting bums on seats in a bigger
Yeah.
theatre. It's okay to experiment in maybe the smaller fringe
Yeah.
theatres,
Yes.
and see how well it works, and then work your way up to that. But unfortunately, Joe Bloggs in the street,
Yeah.
when he's heard of Miss Saigon,
Yeah,
he
the helicopter,
Yeah.
that's
he
what
wants
they
he
wanna
wants to go see Miss Saigon. He's not
Yeah.
interested in seeing a take on Miss Saigon or something
Yeah.
different, But so
Carry on, Miss Saigon.
yeah.
I'll write that.
We could definitely do
Not a
that.
musical, but my word. Oh, look at that chopper on the stage. Anyway, I think they get the idea there. So it would write itself.
That would fit quite well the Baker's Wife, actually.
Combine the two.
So, when the dust has finally settled and the curtains of, I'm falling into cliche here. When you're finished with it, what's the thing you'll be remembering most from The Baker's Wife? What will you take from it? It could be anything at all. It could be a song, it could be the opportunity to work with somebody, the eternal lament that you weren't playing the baker. It could be...
Well, we're only halfway. We're only
Yeah, I'm not ruining it. I'm not
finished
ending it for you yet.
rehearsals, so we can't say. We don't know what's going to happen in the
That's
next leg of it. Sugar Fridays.
Yeah, Sugar Fridays.
Yeah.
Sugar fried what?
Sugar Fridays.
Oh, Sugar Fridays.
Yeah.
Fridays full of sugar.
Sugar
Yeah.
Fridays.
Sugar frying. But jolly good. I enjoyed that. So you're going to miss the sugar intake.
We've had a lot of baked goods over the rehearsal
We've been
period.
very
and
taken care
Well,
of.
that's method, isn't it? You're
Well,
setting
of
a scene by
course.
eating
Absolutely.
pastry. I mean, as long as
Our
there's
costumes might not agree with us,
No.
but
But honestly, what would you take? Is there any character? Is there any aspect of the character or any character that you think actually that's a really remarkable thing? Maybe that you don't, but
I think the whole story really it makes you think a lot about modern relationships and how much sometimes are people settling and
yes.
or are people following that love and lust, and it really gets the cogs turning, I think. And I think it will in the audience as well.
Yeah, I think it definitely plays with, especially in our world where everything is very much, everyone is what you see, and we play of lust, and we that's what we play for. That this show kind of shows that's not everything. There's got to be more to it. It doesn't work. That doesn't work. And it's an old idea, but we have to keep repeating it. We have to keep coming back to it.
But underneath, isn't it? Yes.
Sorry.
No, I was going to say.
No, that was it. That was my full phrase.
I think we still have 2 answers waiting. I'm taking your sugar as a facetious answer. So
No,
I still want to.
I'd say don't judge a book by its cover.
Oh, it is. Oh, you're giving me a lovely pithy answer.
I think, I think that's what I would take away from this piece.
I think, obviously, when you're casting a show, you're cast as a part. You have no idea who you're going to be with. You don't know really what the production company are going to be like.
Oh, cool.
You go in blind, essentially. You know what the show is, and you know who your character is. You know when your rehearsals start and when it finishes. And I think
I hate everyone.
Yeah, I think we've been actually extremely lucky with our cast, because there really has been a really nice gelling of cast. I know we did a very awkward finger thing there, but yeah, we.
Just for description, that was a mesh. It was a meshing mime.
I don't know what I was doing there. Awkward, and I think you do kind of get into these when you're doing a lot of shows one after the other. It's like, oh yeah, we'll stay friends, but I think individually we've all kind of had little moments together, and it's been really kind of fun, and we brought that on stage as well. Then, so it's that'll be nice to take away, and I'll miss that maybe going into other shows. I won't necessarily have that, because you can't second guess. You never know what's going to happen within each show. So that's been really lovely, and we've been very, very lucky with that, thankfully. So.
The camaraderie is such an important part, isn't it? And I can see that as you're talking to me as well. Thank you. That's absolutely lovely. I will just mention. On the day we're recording, the obituaries for the late Ron Moody have all just been published, who died yesterday at 91, famous for playing Fagin.
He died as well.
Yeah, it wasn't just Christopher Lee. The Grim Reapers had a good old day.
God.
Yes, he was 91. He's in the 1960s, the original Fagin from 1960s Oliver. And the obituaries are all saying that he and Georgia Brown, who played Nancy, really hated each other.
Really?
Yes, because she really resented his ability to be able to ad-lib and get jokes when things else were going on. So he was a bit of a scene stealer, they were saying.
Right, yeah.
And unfortunately, the entire cast took sides. So they're the ones who were in favour of Georgia Brown and the ones who were in favour of Ron. And they said it really soured the working relationships, but somehow it really powered the stage performances.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't want shows to be like that always, but they said on this occasion it worked really well, but purely by chance. Anyway, I'm just mentioning it. That's the complete opposite of what you've got. You've got a beautiful camaraderie group, people liking each other, and that infuses the genuine relationships you're seeing on stage, I hope. Thank you. So I'm just throwing that in for anecdotal purposes, you understand. Now, there's one thing we haven't mentioned, I think. I'm a happy member of the public. I've just listened to this fascinating conversation. I think, there's a show I fancy seeing. I have no way of knowing how to do it. Can that situation be resolved in any way, do you think?
Right, I'm going to do this, the most important part. It's at the Drayton Arms Theatre from the 16th of June to the 4th of July. It's £16, £12 concessions. You can book tickets at mkecproductions.co.uk and just go ahead, get on.
The name of that theatre again, and what road it's in?
Oh, what road is it in?
Old Brompton Road.
Drayton.
And also performances are Tuesday to Saturday, 8 p.m, with a matinee at 3 p.m. on the Saturday.
Lovely.
That's The Baker's Wife at the Drayton Arms on Old Brompton Road. You can find us on Twitter.
Gloucester Road is the nearest tube station.
We tweet at Baker's Wife LDN. That's our.
And if you can't find it after that, you don't deserve to see the show, I say.
But we want to see you.
Now, thank you so much for giving me your time, because
Thank you.
what people don't know is you've just spent a week rehearsing. I've just swanned in at the end on a Friday afternoon on a really hot, sort of thundery, oppressive day here in London. And you have been as nice as pie, if I may say, given a Baker's tone. But you've been absolutely lovely to talk to. You've been absolutely fascinating to talk to. And I look forward to seeing you on the stage. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Musical talk. Well, there we are. The Mayor and his nieces from The Baker's Wife. The Mayor there was played, as you heard, by Blair Robertson, and he played Basil in the recent musical production of The Picture of Dorian Gray, about which we heard here on Musical Talk earlier in the year, just before it opened at the King's Head Theatre in Islington. My thanks go out to the wonderful people I interviewed there. I hope you enjoyed that conversation. I certainly enjoyed recording it, and I'm rather looking forward to seeing the show. And if you are too, here's how you can go and see it. It's on between the 16th of June and the 4th of July. That's an easy date to remember, isn't it? And you can see it at the Drayton Arms Theatre in the Old Brompton Road, which is incredibly easy to reach by the Underground. It's on the District Line. You can go to the website, which is www.thedraytonarmstheatre.co.uk, or you could phone 020 7835 2301 to order tickets. They're also on Facebook and Twitter, and you can buy tickets also from the production company website MKECPRODUCTIONS, MKEC Productions, that is, .co.uk. I think if you're a fan of Wicked, you should go and see the show, just to prove to yourself how versatile Stephen Schwartz is. Well, that's very nearly it for this week, but I am just going to record a little thing that happened to me the other day that just reminded me that if you look hard enough, you can find musical theatre almost anywhere. I can heartily recommend a trip, if you're in London, to the Twinings Tea Shop in the Strand. It's right opposite the Royal Courts of Justice. The shop has been there for over 300 years and is an amazing shop in its own right. There are hundreds and hundreds of varieties of tea that you can smell, try, experience and buy there. There's also a little exhibition about the shop and the Twinings family over the last 300 years. But what caught my eye when I went there with a good friend of mine was a poem on the wall. The poem had been written specifically to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the company and the opening of the shop. But what surprised me most, apart from the fact that the poem was delightful, charming, witty and funny, as well as being an accurate social history of the importance of tea, or otherwise, in British history over 300 years, was the fact that the poem was written by A.P. Herbert. Now, A.P. Herbert may not be a name you've heard of, but he was one of the great British lyricists of the 20th century and worked a great deal with Vivian Ellis on many of those mid-20th century shows, which were so delightful, that cross between Noel Coward and Ivor Novello, which I find so appealing. A.P. Herbert was responsible for many a witty lyric, as well as many meaningful lyrics. But the last place I expected to find a piece of his work was on the wall of a 300-year-old tea shop opposite the Royal Courts of Justice in the Strand. Well, keep your eyes open, and you might find something unusual lurking in the world of the highways and byways of musical theatre in a place you completely don't expect it. There we are, nothing but a crisp little anecdote. Well, they say all good things must come to an end, but so must all bad things, so it means I, the idiot, must shut up. So, for the time being, the best way to make that happen is for me to utter those magic words, goodbye. And I'm going to do that now. Goodbye. This episode of Musical Talk edited and presented by Thos Ribbits. Copyright Musical Talk 2015. And don't forget to follow Musical Talk on the various social networks. And you can follow me on Twitter at Musical Talk Thos. I hope next week when I won't do any of this. I hope next week when I see you and you afterwards you say, "Oh, well, we've turned into Oliver. We all hate each other." Oh, bastards!
It happened. You bastard.